Okay, there are 8 of us, so I'll start right away. So hopefully, because we are already like 50 minutes in the workshop, so I hope I don't go too fast. All right, though. So welcome to our third workshop run by me. I am Erik once again. Thank you so much for joining me in person today. Because we encourage face-to-face interaction, we didn't include the live streaming version. So I hope your fellow students understand this. But still, we are recording this class or this workshop so your classmates can have a look. So what about we? Yeah. So what we're going to go over today would be the overall structure of your final report based on what you're going to do. Because my good guess is most of you are doing primary research, meaning you are collecting data, you are interviewing people, doing survey, and so on. So we'll base the structure on research articles involving primary research. And we have 3 main themes today, so I hope I don't go too fast. So the first one will be claiming a research warrant because you have started your project. Basically, your research idea has been validated by your supervisors. But when you are writing your final report, how are you going to win your supervisor's attention? Not just their interest or valuing your research. The second one is how are you managing your voice with other voices in writing? So maybe you don't know, writing is actually some kind of a dialogic process. You're engaging dialogues with people, although you are writing it, although you are typing it. But what kind of dialogues you're engaging in the writing, I'll explain to you. Especially, it happens when you are doing literature review. How are you going to organize a literature review? How are you going to, evaluate or review the research literature is going to be a question. And then finally, how are you going to wrap up your report by developing your insights? So today, a part of it will be about the principles of writing up a research report. And another part of it will be linguistic. I mean, involving language, how you are using language to express yourselves in the writing. I mean, in the report. I'm not sure whether you have read your IS student project handbook sent by your IS project coordinator or not. So at the end of your handbook, there is a marking criteria. So you would like to have a look. But basically, they will mark your report based on these 7 areas. First of all, your abstract, a summary of your whole project, whether you have synthesized all the essential information, and then your introduction, whether you have explained your background and the purpose of your study clearly, and then your lit review, whether it's updated, relevant, with theories described clearly. And then you have methods. It's rigorous. Rigorous means it's systematic. It can be replicable by people who are going to do the similar research. So you are using a similar construct, you're using a similar framework. Analysis is logical and evident. You are basing your analysis on findings, on the evidence you have found from the data. And then at the end, you have a clear and insightful discussion and conclusion. And last but not the least, of course, we talk a lot about spelling, don't misspell keywords. Grammar is important, but not just because of reasons like you need to use a particular kind of tense, you need to use a particular kind of technical terms, but grammar plays an important role by highlighting what you want to focus on in a sentence or in a paragraph. And of course, you need a clear layout, how you are designing your headings, you are organizing your ideas with the headings. And finally, don't forget the declaration form. You need the declaration form, your cover page. And I think we emphasize this quite clearly before we start the research project. In the student handbook, we also talked about the 5 approaches you can use to write your final report. In case you are struggling which to choose, my idea is if you are doing research, if you are collecting data, use this approach because it's the standardized way to write up a research report. So it's approach 5. So it's similar to a research article, and it follows the introduction, lit review, methods, results, discussion, and conclusion structure. So in scientific reports, sometimes we have more concise structure like IMRD. I don't think I'm gonna, yeah. Okay, some research articles will only have an abstract, introduction, methods, results, and discussion. But in order to capture as many things as possible in your final report, make sure you follow this. And if you have been to my second workshop a couple of weeks ago, you may have already seen this hourglass model based on John Swales and Feek 2012, which is a little bit old, but still English writing teaching across the world still use this model mainly. So maybe Sylvia can also refer to this because she's also writing her master's degree dissertation. So you can also follow this hourglass model. And you can see in the middle, you have the slimmest part of the shape. Because by slimmest, we mean it is the most specific part of your whole report because you are reporting on your own study. But before you write your own study, you need to frame it with something more general, like a background, in some background information in which your study happens. And then you gradually move towards your own research. You are explaining why your research is important, why your study has significance. And after presenting the results, you need to zoom back out to talk about contributions. What can you do after doing this research? Are you helping somebody? Are you advancing the field? If you're interested in the theories, if you're interested in the concepts and things, are you pushing the field forward? So you aren't going to save the world with just your report. No, don't think about that. You're not going to save the world. You can only save yourselves by writing a good report. But you still need to explain how possibly you are helping the field to move forward. So in my case, when I am doing a teaching research, for example, the end goal of it is not to save everybody from the hassle of doing homework. Sorry, you still have to do your homework. But I am going to help teachers, fellow teachers, how to teach better so you can be just a little bit happier in the classroom. I'm sure learning is a tough process. On some days, you may be very motivated, you are very interested in what you are learning in the classroom. But whenever you see your teacher talking in front of you, not again, right? But still, we are doing everything to help you learn better. So I'm not sure whether you have your proposals with you, but if you have logged on to quizzes, think about it. You read your proposal again, or you think about your proposals again. Tell me, what can you recycle from the proposal in your report? So for those of you who, you can still join quizzes by going to joinmyquiz.com and enter the room number 777262. Okay, so for the best learning experience, so that you can learn with us together, you're not missing out anything, please go to joinmyquiz.com and enter 777262. With your mobile phones, with your laptops, with your tablets, all are welcomed. So we have a few answers. Objectives of this paper, yes. So basically, you can recycle what you're going to do, because that's exactly what you're going to do in your research. So why not recycle it? But I've got a question for you. Do you have to send your proposal through Turnitin? Do you need to use Turnitin? Yes or no? If you have uploaded your proposals on Turnitin, make sure you don't copy exactly the objectives to your report. You need to paraphrase it, because Turnitin can detect your submission. So you have to do some work. Similarly, yes, the introduction and the lit review part. Remember, your proposal is a very short piece of text, right? But when you are elaborating your introduction, as I will show you in a minute, you have to expand your introduction a little bit. So that means you also need to paraphrase what you have written. Okay, don't dump them. Well, I wrote my PhD proposal, but I found that there are bits I can reuse in my final dissertation, but I won't consider copying exactly from the proposal to to the dissertation, because the context has changed when you are writing your final report. The situation has changed, and you have new ideas about your research. So you have to consider again what you have to change in your introduction and lit review. Significance of the study, thank you, Sammy. And Hugo says the introduction and objectives, good. Okay, research methods, yes. Intro and title. Okay. Well, tell you what, sometimes you also need to change your title a little bit, but it depends on what your supervisor says about you, says about your project. Good. So these are the ideas. So there are quite some significant parts of your proposal that can be reused, but how are we going to use them better? So I received a proposal from one of your classmates, okay? And he told me, I didn't follow what you said about organizing your introduction from the broadest to the most specific. Well, that depending on what your supervisor says about your writing, it would be rather difficult to read if you randomly organize your introduction or organize your overall report without considering what is the background of your research and how you are transitioning from the background, linking it to your research, because you need to explain. You aren't randomly doing some random research. You are basing your research on some problems or issues that you want to solve. So what are the problems? And the problems need to be mentioned and explained in the introduction. So here it is. By claiming the research warrant, it means when you are starting your report, the introduction plays an important part, that it makes your whole research legitimate. Legitimate means 合理, 合法, reasonable. So why you are doing this research? Why is it important? Not just to you, because you are working within a particular discipline. Like some of you are from Chinese, some of you are from psychology or sociology, some of you are from business, some of you are from bilingual communication. In your field, there is something important they want to find out. So what is it that you want to find out? And if you remember from the previous workshop, I've shown you this already. The functions of an introduction is mainly well, a part of it is descriptive. You are describing the background of your research. Where does your research happen? And also, you are introducing your study. And then I did not change this. So you are introducing your report in an organized manner. So that means you are previewing at the end of the introduction. When you close the introduction section, you have to introduce your report. What comes next? What comes after the next part? And so on. How are you going to wrap it up? Aside from describing your research and your dissertation or your report, you also have to argue. So many of you did not remember this and simply describe the whole thing. Okay, it's okay, but it lacks the punch, it lacks the persuasion or the persuasiveness to convince your supervisor that your research is worthwhile. So that's why I also included the ideas in bold. You introduce the background and introduce why it is important. Sometimes it's important because there are lots of people talking about it, right? If there are lots of people talking about it, it's important. This is number one. Two, there are problems to solve. And the problems, it's yet to be solved. So you have to tackle it. So think about that when you write your proposals, did you indicate the problems of the field? Did you? Or are you describing something important that everyone wants to have a part? Well, everyone wants to answer, but only you can answer that question. And so, by talking about that, you're also introducing why your study or what you study is relevant in your disciplinary research field. Remember, you work within your division, you work within your program. You have to link your study with the field as well as the broader society. So I've been mentioning quite a bit about fields. So what is field? Field 係乜嘢？咩係 field 啊？出邊耕田嗰個 field 係咪？或者有冇人係田徑隊啊？出邊嗰個 field and track 嗰個 field 唔係咩係 field 啊？Field in the sorry 方面 something like that 領域得唔得啊？It seems that I can also teach Chinese in some sense. Well, in your study, there are two fields you have to mention. The first field is your academic field. What comprises the knowledge that you have in your study? So the field of knowledge include the contextual knowledge. For example, when you study language, it may have to do with the society, right? So society, how you understand the society is the contextual knowledge. 對於嗰個周邊環境嘅認知，而係有一個 framework 去解釋嘅。And the framework we talk about is the academic knowledge, is the academic framework, the theories, the concepts that help you understand the world in a more systematic way. I may have told you in the proposal workshop that you don't need all these concepts and theories to understand the world. But in order to show to your parents that you have done something in a university, you need to tell them, I have learned this and learned that. And now I understand the world better, so I can go to the workplace. Right? Of course, it's more than that, but to fulfill your family's expectations, you have to do it. So some knowledge is informed by theories and concepts. Some concepts and the ideas coming out of that after some time. So some things that you are reading right now can be as old as 20 years or older, even older than I am. So old that they are taken for granted as truth or as facts. Like you seldom question it. So here comes research. Research plays a good role in questioning these so-called truth or facts. So the field of research involves two things. Either it's your research, what you're going to do in your project. Another field of research is other people's research, but relevant to your study. Okay, they serve to investigate and report on the field of knowledge. So usually when you read literature reviews, you can see, after the citation or before the citation, you have some kind of knowledge going on explained by those authors. And they also serve to check, verify if the knowledge is true or factual. Sometimes knowledge can be rebutted. You can challenge the knowledge and build something new. I'm not sure whether at the undergraduate level you have to do this. Again, you are not going to save the world, unlike me, unlike Sylvia, who is going to save the world through her MA dissertation, but not necessarily all the time. Sometimes you're just checking whether it's true, whether something is true, whether you can repeat the whole study to get something out of it. So on the first of your activity sheet, you have a sample introduction from a website called MICUSP. Okay, I'm going to send you over to the website, but you are still on the same page with me. So this is what we call a corpus. A corpus is a systematically organized database, text database, for checking patterns of a body of text. So this corpus is called Michigan Corpus of Upper Level Student Papers, meaning that a group of scholars have compiled a database storing A-grade papers. So basically, you can learn quite a bit from these people, these students, how they are writing their reports. So they include different parts, so you can check the abstract, the definitions of results, and so on. You can check different paper types, like reports, research paper, and so on. And you can also choose discipline. So if you belong to English, you can check English papers. If you belong to business, you can check business papers. But I'm not going to dig deep into this tool today. But somehow, when you check the text in detail, you can find something useful from it. So this is from a linguistic paper about hedging in academic written English. So it's pretty long. So I give you a bit of time to read it together with your friends. And I've got a question for you. This is what I don't want you to do in your report as an introduction, because it's too long. It's 547 words. So there is no such thing as a 547-word paragraph. If you have a paragraph over 200 words or 300 words, it means you are packing too many things inside one paragraph. So I want you to quickly read the introduction and tell me how many paragraphs you can break it down into. And I think there is a question after this slide. And have a go first, have a read first, and then I will send you to the question. in order to speed up your process, remember what I just mentioned about the two fields, the field of knowledge and the field of research. So which part is talking about the writer's own research? Which part is talking about other research? And is there any part that talks about the overall background of the knowledge about a concept called hedging? Hedging is commonly found in your writing as well. So hedging is a technical term for modal verbs like may, should, can, possible. These words are called hedging. Okay. So 2 more minutes. Okay, you can still make up your mind after the time is up. So let's see who is leading the board. Jerome is taking over Lian. Lian, 冇扭佢耳仔。Lian. Okay. 3 paragraphs can be a better idea. So let's have a look at the paragraph again. So how would you break it down into 3 paragraphs? What's the first thing that you will, separate from the paragraph first? What's the first thing that you can identify first? Sometimes you don't have to read from the top. You can sometimes read from the bottom. So what will you break from the paragraph first? Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Lian. So you first start with, it's good that you start a new paragraph right here, because you are talking about your research, this paper. So this writer chose to be present in the paper by using I. I will look specifically at this. I will do this and that. I can't say you can't. I won't say you can't use I, but depend on what kind of verbs you are using it with. If it's I believe, I think, I agree, no. But if you say I examine, I argue, or I will turn to my own research, for example, you can. But to play safe, not every supervisor is friendly like Erik, who say, well, I'll let you use I in your writing. Sometimes they will say no. Okay, so make sure you can turn I into something else, like this paper looks specifically at multiple hedging, or the present study looks specifically at multiple hedging. Okay, so the first thing, you can talk about your own research in a separate paragraph. So what's the second thing that you can break from the paragraph? Did you find something that the writer mentions that something is missing from this many research studies? Let's read from the middle. Here, the fact that multiple hedging does indeed occur is evident, and that many studies mention it in passing. However, few devote any significant amount of space or time to this study. Although not the best way to put it, but at least the writer is trying to say that, although there are many studies talking about the same topic in general, a particular area is not studied well. So I will break it from here to be the second paragraph. So this is paragraph number 3, paragraph number 2. And what's remaining can be a good first paragraph talking about the background of the research with a common phrase as the opening: over the past 20 years, over the past many years. Okay, so if something is important, researchers will say, we have been doing this for many years. We have been looking at this for many years, especially for some classic theoretical concepts that needs to be updated from time to time. So you will talk a lot about time in your introduction. Okay, so the first sentence is a very brief introduction of the background. Over the past 20 years, hedging has become an increasingly well-researched aspect of academic writing. So who would think of studying may, should, can, will, right? But we do a lot of research on understanding how you use modal verbs, for example, whether you are overusing it, whether you are underusing them. And then from the second sentence on, we have been talking about research, much of the research on hedging, and then many studies, and then a research has been undertaken, and then you have citations. Okay. This means when you are writing an introduction, you start doing a little bit of lit review to introduce what you're going to talk about, what concepts you're talking about in your dissertation, and how these concepts will link to your own research. Remember the connection between the previous research and your own research. If there is a break, okay, if you are not doing anything relevant, if you are not mentioning the previous research, how does the supervisor know you are doing something meaningful in your field? Right? I can just pull some like random blog articles you can find on the internet and say, people are talking about that. That must be popular. So I'm doing that research. That's not what we're going to do in our report. Moving on. Okay, so far so good. So if I break the paragraphs down in 2 fields again, roughly, I will just go over this very quickly. The knowledge that the writer talked about would be the academic community in general and English for academic purposes, commonly called EAP. And then aside from the context knowledge, we also talk about language, the knowledge about language, like academic writing, hedging, politeness, academic genre, and so on and so forth. Aside from the knowledge field, the research field include other research on EAP research, pragmatic research, contrastive rhetoric studies, genre studies, in relation to your own, like academic writing study on multiple hedging. So when you are writing your introduction, make sure you write your introduction when you have finished doing your research, when you have finished writing your methods, your results, and you go back to the introduction. You don't have to write from the top all the time. I know many of you would go like, my first draft is my final draft. Yeah, because tomorrow is the deadline. I'm gonna do it overnight. 4000字啫，難唔到我嘅，right? No, remember you have to start as soon as you can by building a momentum that you are doing something every day. However, a few words, like 100 words, even it's just 100 words will do. You do your math, okay? If you write 100 words every day, it only takes 1 month and 10 days to finish your first draft. And from now it's well, you are going to hand in your dissertation, your report by week 14, right? Or week 13, right? So that means if you have finished, if you start today, and you write 100 words every day, it's roughly, you finish it by your first draft by 25th of April. So which is not bad. So if you haven't started writing, think about that. Started? Yeah, you can start now, anytime now. Some days you may write more than 100 words, and that give yourself some kudos for that. 有陣時你會寫多啲，有陣時會寫少啲。寫多啲嗰日記得要獎勵自己食餐好嘅，或者打多鋪機咁樣。咩啊？即係經常都獎勵自己先。啊，今日寫咗5個字喎，獎勵下自己先。Right. Well, I'm not sure whether you really have to find a research gap in your study, but if you can find it, your supervisor will be very happy and consider working with you in some projects. But let's read it. Addressing the research gap. It goes, many studies mention it in passing, however, few devote any significant amount of space or time to its study. What this lacks of focused attention leaves unclear is just how often multiple hedging occurs, whether or not it's considered acceptable, blah, blah, blah. So may affect the strength or amount of a given writer's use of hedges. So it's also on the first page of your activity sheet. So you go back to that again and spend a little bit of time just to find the phrases that the writer uses to indicate the research gap. Okay, so on the next slide, you are going to find it out by typing the answers. Okay, so you can always refer to the activity sheet. So type the phrases that the writer used to indicate the research gap. What is missing? What is lacking? What is problematic? You have 2 minutes. They are around the beginning of the paragraph or the passage. what are the words that express lack? Okay. So undertaken. Undertaken is a verb meaning conducting, doing something. So it hasn't got anything to do with the lack yet. But it's a good word. If you don't want to use conduct, if you don't want to use do research, you can use some research studies have been undertaken. But because it has the word under, right? Under. So it gives you a feel that it has something to do with lacking. Hmm. Okay, so it's over? I didn't know. Okay, so let's have a look. Yeah, 但係又唔答喎。哦，心裏知道 OK 啦，係啊。As long as you know in your heart. Well, many studies mention it in passing. In passing is actually quite a good word, but I personally won't use it. However, so whenever you can see a marker, however, you know something bad is coming. Okay? It's like friend zoning a guy. Say, I like you, however, can we be friends? So girls, you know what to do when you are going to friend zone anybody. So few devote any significant amount of space and time. Few, meaning 唔係好多, not many. So remember the difference between a few and few. Few 即係少, a few means 都有幾個咁解. Secondly, what this lack of focused attention leaves unclear. So when after doing some reading of your field about your topic, when you find something unclear or when there is something that has been undone, hasn't yet been done by the researchers, can be your research gap. 即係話咧，你睇完呢啲文之後咧，特別係喺 conclusion 嘅時候咧，有好多時啲研究員嗰啲作者都會話啊，我哋仲有啲咩未做。Those limitations can be your research gap, especially when you are reading papers in 2020, 2021, and so on, when the researchers says there are limitations, maybe that's something I want to explore. Yeah, if you have the time, if you have the resources. Okay, so you can use words such as few in relation to research. Few research or little or none has been done, or lack, unclear. These are quite some good words to choose. Okay, so you may also want to think about what else the research field may lack by reading some sentences on the screen or on the second page of your activity sheet. Okay, so we call these lines extracted from the corpus or from the database concordances. So they are example sentences you can learn from, whether you are looking for the right words to say something, or you want to, after learning a new word or learning a new phrase, and you want to know how it is used in academic writing, the tools, the corpus tools that I've mentioned, like the MICUSP and the one that I'm going to explain to show you later on in today's workshop, will help you do that. So let's read a few sentences together. There is a lack of analysis of confirmatory feedback in the literature surrounding language teacher education. And second, a lack of attention to dissertation grant proposal, and lack of clarity and agreement, lack of definitional consistency of constructs, lack of empirical evidence. Empirical research. Empirical means you are basing your study on evidence, empirical, nothing to do with empire. empirical 同呢個帝國冇關嘅，同 empire 冇關嘅，都係同一啲關於 evidence、關於證據嘅有 support 嘅一啲嘅研究咁樣。empirical research, lack of qualitative research, lack of reliable measures. So the first question is, I think that's a multiple choice question for all of you. Give me the next slide, please. Yes. So read the sentences with lack of as a key phrase on page 2. Check the meanings on the right of the key phrase. What are commonly identified as a gap? So missing participants, something about a theory missing, something is missing or lacking in the previous research on the subject matter, or none of the above. So which one is a better answer for the sentences that you have just read? Okay, 20 seconds. Okay, 5 seconds. Right, time up. So let's see how you guys are doing. Oh, Hugo's coming up. Yes. Number 3, number 3 is the correct answer. Something is missing or lacking in the previous research on the subject. Okay. Can I go back? Yes. So you can see the highlighted words. Sometimes when you are writing your introduction, when you are deciding what to research on, you may think about what other research studies have been missing. Are the methods okay? Are the methods systematic enough? Are there evidences that support their findings that it warrants more studies to find out more answers? Okay, so usually when you read the introductions, sometimes what's lacking is the discussion of, the research methods. Okay, there is always room for improvement for every single research. So make sure you understand that no research is perfect. Okay. So the overall organization of your introduction goes like this. You start from the field knowledge first, about the context, about the background of the subject matter. And then you mention how this background knowledge is discussed in the relevant research, the published research. And then you introduce your research, what your dissertation reports on, and how you are going to report your study. So this is how you can organize your text. So focus on the verbs. It may not be the best verb choice, but still it does the work. In this paper, I will look at multiple hedging. You can use investigate. Okay, by providing an extensive review of the literature and then gathering from these research and so on and so forth. And then I will turn to my own research, and then I will look at multiple hedging and then a survey, and I conclude. So in this case, the writer did a very good job by linking the other research to his or her own research. Okay, when he talked about doing a lit review, gathering a working definition from the previous definition, focusing on the concepts that are addressed in the literature, he was talking or she was talking about the other research on the topic. And then you should talk about yourself, what you are doing in your research. So that's what Rebecca was saying. You can recycle the objectives of your research, but are you, rewriting it in the form of a paragraph? Okay, remember your objectives are written in point form, right? As you are requested to, as you were requested to. But now you can put the objectives back, the points back in the paragraph. Okay, so you go check some sample papers from MICUSP, and it can give you some good ideas about what good writing comprises. Okay. So there are a few phrases you can use to introduce the context. For example, you can talk about the history of the fields, like people have been doing research for so many years. So the phrases include the past decade, over a number of years, over 20 years, over 30 years, during the past 2 decades, or at the time of something. And when you are introducing the field in the context of academic writing, for example, in the context of procurement management, for example, you can talk about that. Or maybe you want to talk about a specific geographical location where the study happens or where the concept appears, like in the United States, in Hong Kong. In that, you are gradually closing in, narrowing your scope from the world, for example, to Hong Kong, let's say, or from the past 20 years to recently, okay? And then you narrow down the focus. In the case of a PolyU CPCE, in the case of the bilingual studies division and so on, in terms of with respect to one of the most at the field of and so on. Okay, on page 3 of the activity sheet, you can find a list of words. So can you circle or can you sorry, can you not circle, can you find the common forward phrases for presenting one's study? So we have things like the following research question, the extent to which in the current study. So basically is like filling out the blanks, choosing from the list of phrases that you can use. So very quickly, show me your answers. And actually, you're quite correct. The purpose of the. So when you use this phrase, very likely what comes after that would be the purpose of the present study, of this study, of my study, of this paper, and so on. Now you have the present study aims in the current study. So you don't have to just say I will do this, I will do that, or in this paper. You can say in this study. Also fine. Quite straightforward. The present study aims, yes. In the current study of the present study was. In the present study aims. Good. Well, the aim of this, so it kind of implies something coming up after the aim of this would be the aim of this study. As a result of, on the basis of, in this article, we. That's so true. The study was to, or is to. So if you want to think about what verbs you can choose with my study, this paper, you can just simply Google and type research verbs. Okay, sometimes the common research verbs may overlap across fields. Like for accounting, you may use verbs such as find, show, confirm, demonstrate, and things like that. And you can actually use that in applied linguistics, like identify, discover, maintain, develop, and so on. So there are lots of lists for research verbs. So, but the whole point is, when you talk about your own research in the introduction, you have to be clear what your study does. Okay, your study examines something, your study investigates something，即係話咧，我嘅研究探討，或者係探索，或者係研究，或者係集中呢啲嘅中文嘅動詞，其實你擺翻做英文其實都係一樣嘅。你要講清楚你嘅研究係做乜嘢。You can't just simply say my study does something。OK， do 啊 make 啊go 啊嗰啲咧，好 simple 嘅動詞咧，我哋比較少用嘅，我哋會用翻啲精準啲嘅動詞咁樣。But that's the idea. You don't have to use I if you don't need to, because we have other choices like the current study, the present study, this article, and so on and so forth. Okay? So thank you so much for your contribution. Okay, so again, wrapping up this part. So I spent so much time talking about this part. Introduction works like a warrant that makes your research legitimate. So that's the idea of writing the introduction. So it's not just about 吹水，唔係吹出嚟嘅個 introduction，一定要攞嚟去拗點解我嘅研究係有價值嘅咧，而唔係純粹係攞 A 嘅。當然啦，你都可以寫得好啲嚟攞 A 嘅，或者做一個好啲嘅 research 攞 A 嘅，或者攞 A 嘅，係啦。The second part, quickly moving forward, about managing your own voice and other voices. Remember, when you write, whatever appears on your paper represents your voice. That's you writing it. But at the same time, you are also writing about something that has been written before. So your writing is actually including some history of other people's writing. 即係話你而家點樣寫嘢咧，包含咗其他人點樣寫嘢，你係學咗人哋點樣寫，你先會咁樣寫嘅。That's why at the beginning of the workshop, I mentioned that when you are writing, you're actually engaging in dialogues with not just the dead people, but the other scholars that come before you. Okay, so we have another example from MICUSP. So I think one of your classmates right here asked, how can I organize my literature review better? So I'm not going to detail, but in this student's writing, in this student's paper, there are two things that the writer talked about. So her study wants to investigate how important international students build social support is. Okay, with other people, other students, like the overseas students instead of local students, in order to cope with American life. And the second thing that she investigated was how effective these social support in building their identity and intercultural maturity. So help them understand other cultures in better ways. So two main things in her study. So think about how many things you are going to talk about in your research. And then it was organized into something like this. So something broadly about cross-cultural adjustment. Adjustment means how someone is adapting to a different life. And then talking about the social importance, the importance of social support. So you can see it's gradually narrowed down. So it's something broad right here. And then It narrows down to something about the evaluation of adjustment of social support. Evaluation 評價 you may be talking about something about social support in school life, meaning that you need friends and less bullying. Okay, don't bully your friends, something like that. And the writer talks about the importance of it. And then social support comes in two different forms in her case. So the thing that she did was to break social support into two things: from host, meaning from local people, local students, from others. So in your lit review, if you are going to talk about something big, like a big concept, like social adjustment, for example, read the articles again and think about how many points it can be broken down so you can tackle them point by point before you organize them in your lit review. 係即係話咧，每一個大嘅 concept， 每一個大 point 咧，其實可以將佢拆細嘅。咁究竟要幾細咧？譬如話用人去分啦 ，social support 同人有關啊嘛，咁咪同即係將人分開咯。或者係我最中意用呢個例子啊！我諗之前上我堂嘅都有記得㗎 globalization 咁樣啦。globalization 可以拆做幾多個 point 咧？咁就唔關人事㗎咯喎，就可能同經濟啊、同個文化啊個角度去出發。咁你就睇下究竟你可以將同一個 point 用幾多個觀點去拆開嚟，而嗰啲 point 咧要同你嘅 research 有關 ，because a concept may be comprised of very many different points, maybe 100 different points. But there are just 1 or 2 points that are relevant to your own research. So you have to choose them carefully. 因為你得4000字 you only have 4,000 words, right? And a literature review in a report may just be 1,000 words. You can't write more than that, right? 如果你寫多過1000字嘅時候，其他地方冇嘢寫啦，冇位寫啦，係咪啊？咁你一定要揀 ，you have to choose carefully what to keep in your lit review. That helps you answer your research questions. Okay, so a quick question for you. What are the phrases you use most frequently when you cite references？ 即係話你做 lit review 嘅時候，經常都會 cite 文嘅。咁你最常用嘅 phrases 係乜嘢咧？你要去 when you introduce the reference in your lit review or in your essays in the past, what are your favorite phrases? From my experience, there is only one favorite phrase from you all students. Yeah, Elvis mentioned some verbs, good. Leon mentioned in someone's article as mentioned in according to. Hugo says according to blah blah blah. Rebecca says a paper named Yeah, mentioned that. I think everything works. Rebecca's version may be a little bit too wordy, but it's still acceptable. That depends on your field. Usually when we cite references, we only mention the author's names. For example, Lim 2024 mentioned that. Okay. We seldom use the paper. We seldom mention the paper title. Unless we can't find the author's name， 即係話有陣時咧有啲文係冇作者嘅，多數嗰啲我哋都唔會用嘅。但係如果你覺得有用嘅，你先至會即係冇名嘅文咧，你先至會寫a paper an anonymous paper name that mention that。OK， And yeah, from my experience, students' favorite phrase is according to, because it's most straightforward and it starts a sentence nicely, right? But in case you're wondering, 如果 according to 係咁好用嘅話，咁點解要有咁多方法嘅？ Right? Why are there so many different citation methods? According to Swales, the gentleman that I mentioned a few slides ago, there are two types of citations. Aside from according to, many of you prefer the one on the right we call non-integral citation. Non-integral means the citations are not a part of the sentence. Okay, you put them at the end of your statements. Like by contrast, students who are fluent in English, during the stay in the United States, and then open bracket, Scram and Lauva, 1988, and then 1984, close bracket. Okay, and sometimes you would go for integral citation. The cited references is a part of a sentence. Like you start your sentence with an author. For example, a subject with a subject-verb combination, Heineken, Hemmel, and Shoot, 1986 recommended, or it can be a part of a noun phrase like a more in-depth study. More in-depth was a study by Allen 2006 of 18 students, or a part of a prepositional phrase according to your favorite, Pittman et al., things like that. There's a reason for that. The way that you cite represents how you want the authors of other references to be mentioned. Okay, do you want them to be in the spotlight? 即係你想唔想佢哋係成句嘢嘅焦點呢？定係還是 or you prefer that you foreground your own arguments first? Well, that really depends on your writing or reading habits. Sometimes people would write their ideas first, and then they look for the references that support their points. 即係話咧，有啲人咧唔理嘅，寫晒自己嘅重點先，寫晒自己嘅 point 先，然之後走去 Google Scholar 揾翻個某篇文去證實翻啊，原來真係有講過喎，咁我就擺喺佢喺後邊。Okay, so I start with non-integral citation first. If you use non-integral citation, if you use the brackets form, it means you prefer to highlight the arguments before the authority of the sources. 即係如果你重視嗰個 source， 唔係重視你嘅 argument 多過嗰個 source 嘅話咧，因為 source 都係緊要噶嘛 ，source 都係啲勁嘅 professor 寫嘅，你 treasure 佢哋先會用嘅啫，係咪 ？But if you think your argument is more important, you put the references at the end of the sentence. Okay? And sometimes you may read a couple of articles who share the same viewpoint. 有陣時可能你睇過3、4篇文之後，發現佢都講同一樣嘢，有同一個觀點嘅時候，你將佢綜合起嚟嘅時候，你唔可能話Lim 2012, Zhang 2024 and Sun 2024 mentioned that. 即係如果你將一堆嘢擺喺個句子嘅開頭 ，if you put all the authors at the beginning of the sentence, it becomes too clumsy. Okay? So you choose to synthesize the argument from multiple sources, put the statement first, and then you end the sentence with the bracketed citations. But sometimes you prefer to highlight the authority first, and you will use the citation verb pattern. 即係話，如果你覺得嗰個作者係緊要嘅，譬如話嗰個係好出名嘅 professor， 對於嗰個項目，對於嗰個topic 係好有研究嘅，你會將佢擺喺頭先。呢個就係個分別。This is the difference. Okay, so you can see a balance of citations in this sample paragraph. I'm not going to go over everything with you, but to remove some sort of vagueness from your writing, sometimes you will use phrases such as line 4, several studies, many studies, some studies. Some students will just end there with a full stop. But a better way to remove that kind of vagueness would be, after you use several studies at the beginning, you end the sentence with non-integral citations. 即係話咧，如果你就咁用 several studies、many studies 嚟做個句子嘅開頭，然之後完咗冇任何 citations 嘅話咧，咁老師一定會圈住你。咁即係咩 studies 啊 ？Which studies? So you have to indicate that, right? And then a similar study reported that something. The writer prefers to talk about the findings first. 即係話咧喺呢度咧個作者係想講咗佢個發現先，從嗰個文章裏邊揾到嘅一啲嘅重點寫出嚟先。But in the second last sentence, you can see the writer prefers to put these two authors first. 同一篇文嚟嘅 Scram and Lava 1988 found that social interaction with Americans was the best predictor of alienation, and so on and so forth. Possibly because these two scholars are very famous in the field, and you don't want to miss out. Okay? You want to show to your reader, your assessor, your supervisor that you have read this important article. So you mention the authors first. Okay, so I have a website to introduce to you. So if you can, you use your browser to go to langtest.jp, langtest.jp/AwSUM. It's read awesome. And follow my instructions. And AwSUM is a website developed by a Japanese English teacher. In full, it's called Academic Word Suggestion Machine. So if you are writing a research article, for example, you can choose the disciplines that you want. Of course, you guys belong to, most of you guys are from applied science, applied linguistics. You can use applied linguistics. But for students who are from psychology, sociology, or business, still you will find some useful terms, some useful phrases for your writing. For example, it has broken down into sections like abstract, introduction, and so on. And when you find we don't have lit review right here, but we can also choose introduction for a time being. And in introduction, there are 3 moves similar to what I've just mentioned. So establishing territory means you talk about the background of your research. Establishing your niche means you find a research gap. And then presenting your study means you introduce your study. On the right-hand side, you have the most frequent 4-word phrase we call 4 grams in introduction. Like, on the other hand, the extent to which, and you can refer to these phrases when you are writing your articles, when you're writing your reports. And here, you can choose 3R, 4R, or 5R, means 3 words, 4 words, or 5 words. And now you can see in introduction, it's quite frequent to see phrases like the present study in terms of the development of, and so on. The thing that you can do is you click on a phrase, or you click on the present study, for example. You have to delete some words too. And then here, you highlight the present study. You can see there is a search box right here, the present study, and then you click search. You can find many examples from here telling you how to use the phrase such as the present study. For example, here, in the present study, comma, by contrast, we assume that, So you can use the present study within a prepositional phrase. Okay, so you have the instruction on page 4. And what I want you to do is to search the word that. So I will do it with you together. So we can start the search again. So you choose keyword 1. The reason for searching that is that I want to see what words come before that, the word that, in academic articles. So you type that, and then when you type, so when you click on the space bar, you can see there are lots of recommendations, but we ignore that. And then you go to here, you can see off 1L to L3L. It means how many words before the word that. You can choose 1L, for example. And if it doesn't show anything, go back to that and put a space. And you will find a list of words that come before that. For example, you have found, you have is, you have and, suggest, show, fact, show, indicated. The reason why I am doing this is that when you are doing lit review, you use a lot of verbs with that. For example, LIM 2024 mentioned that. So I want to show you the pattern of the word that, what comes before that. So have a look. In this box, and find a verb that you like. For example, I will choose recommend. Somewhere there must be a word recommend. Or demonstrated, or demonstrated. It now looks like Rebecca is a better AwSUM user than I am. And I've been using that for months. Okay, so here's the question. The first question is, what are the common verbs coming before the word that? Choose one or two that you know, or choose one or two that you have found from the corpus. Okay, so you have a few, such as found, such as suggest, so you can choose whatever you want to. And these are what we call research verbs or reporting verbs. 因為咧呢一啲嘅動詞咧，都係用嚟去報告翻你嘅文章做過啲乜嘢，或者係講緊啲乜嘢。Or what other research papers are talking about? And once you have learned new vocabularies, you can check this platform to see how it is used in academic papers. With examples such as results demonstrated that learners did notice feedback as feedback in both modes. These sentences may not be about your studies. 係因為呢啲嘅例句咧，未必係同你嘅研究有關嘅，但係最少你明白到啊，呢啲生字可以喺真實嘅環境裏邊點樣使用咧咁樣。How you use it in real writing situations. Okay. So commonly we have verbs such as argue, show, suggest. What else? These are the important ones. These are the essential ones. 得呢幾個咋？冇理由嘅。indicate 係啊，有 indicate 啦，有 recommend 啦，mentioned 啦，find yes。stated 啦 yes。If the author is putting forward facts, for example, we may use more neutral verbs such as state, mention. But if you want to show that the authors do take a stance towards some arguments, you may want to choose more, stance-taking terms such as suggest, argue, assert, indicate。因為咧動詞都有分唔同嘅程度嘅立場嘅，譬如話中立啲嘅立場，表明啦 stated，提及啦 mention，但係咧有一啲嘅動詞係會有立場嘅，譬如話質疑啊 doubt，或者係argue 啊，或者係如果你係想證實一啲嘅 confirm 啊 assert 啊呢啲，我哋會有一個 scale 嘅，咁要用得恰當啦。You need to use them appropriately. Because these verb choice also represent how well you understand the readings, number one. And two, these verbs also show your stance towards the readings that you have read。即係話咧，你其實用乜嘢字去表達嗰個作者點樣形容佢嘅 findings 又好，點樣形容嗰啲嘅 academic knowledge 咧，都表達咗你嘅立場嘅。如果你相信嗰個作者嘅話 ，you would choose more affirmative verbs such as argue, believe, or things like that. Or if you think that they are not certain，如果你覺得佢哋唔係好肯定嘅 ，you will say they claim that 佢哋聲稱。嗱，記住聲稱唔可以亂咁用。如果聲稱 claim 嘅話咧，就表示你唔信嗰個人講嘅嘢，佢就冇根據嘅 claim。guess 都係啦 ，guess 同 predict 咧兩個字，我哋查字典咧都係叫估計，都係叫估。但係咧，千祈唔好當中文嘅解釋係一樣，因為 guess 咧係冇證據嘅 ，predict 咧係 based on 一啲嘅 research 嘅 findings 或者 estimate 都係。咁所以嗰啲咩揣測啊、speculate 啊、guess 啊嗰啲就少啲用啦，除非你真係好唔信嗰個作者咁樣樣。Okay, moving on. What are commonly found before the reporting verbs？頭先我都講過啦，喺 demonstrated 呢啲 verbs 前邊咧，多數都係主語啦，即係都係名詞啦。咁即係有啲乜嘢喺裏邊啊？I think that's a multiple choice question. Citations, writer's own study, or the findings, results, analysis of the research study, like the final structural model demonstrated that, or all of the above. Okay, 10 seconds. Right. So let's see who's taking over who. Okay, Elvis and Shay are coming up, and Leon is leading. Great. So for those of you who have chosen 2 or 3, congratulations, you're still correct. But the most correct answer, the best answer is all of the above. When you look at the concordance lines, when you look at the examples from AwSUM, you can find things such as results demonstrated that. Further, they demonstrated that, meaning the authors. And further empirical research has demonstrated that. 即係話咧 reporting verbs 或者 research verbs 咧，好多時前邊咧都唔係淨係人嘅文章可以，研究嘅方法都可以，分析方法都可以，係啦。即係我哋將嗰啲嘢擬人化，好似嗰個 research 自己識講嘢咁樣。Good. So I hope that if you have learned something new, like new vocabulary from different readings, you can check this website in order to find, for example, the common phrases you can use in different parts of your report and how the new vocabulary items can be used in sentences by very good writing. These papers, these examples are from the research papers that are published. 即係話呢啲嘅文章全部都已經係出咗版嘅，咁所以呢啲都會係業界嘅標準啦，咁樣樣。Okay, so we have a few left. Wrapping up. So literature review is an arena where you engage in dialogues with other voices。即係話咧，你唔係純粹係將你睇過嘅文章一次過講晒出嚟，形容晒出嚟，你仲要去分析，你仲要去評估下呢啲嘅文章有冇啲乜嘢缺漏咧？有冇啲乜嘢做得好？有啲咩做得唔好咧 ？What have been done well? What have been done less well that you have to explore in your own study? So that's why when you write, it's always a dialogue, not simply between you and your supervisor, but it's also between you and the previous authors when you read other papers. Okay, finally, it's very intensive, I know, but it's almost over. So when you have found everything that you need from your research, you need to build your insights as you wrap up your report. So that's why the sequence of writing your draft would be methods and results first, and then you write up your discussion and conclusion, and then you go back to introduction. It's easier. It helps you build the momentum to keep doing things for your article. So insight, 中文係洞察力 but translating the English term into Chinese doesn't help too much. So insight is some accurate understanding of your study through consolidating the findings. 咁譬如話有一啲嘅 data 分析完之後，有一啲嘅結果走出嚟 some findings emerge. You have to explain what this finding or what these findings mean in the field. 譬如話，你發現咗好多人喺research report 裏邊用 according to 嘅，咁即係咩意思咧？因為我就咁講there are many students who like using according to when they cite resources. And if you end the research just that, you are simply describing your findings. That doesn't help you get a higher mark. You have to tell your supervisor, that means this phrase is overused. And these students may lack the vocabulary for citing research. 即係話你一定要講清楚我揾到呢一啲結果之後，表示啲乜嘢咧？原來係學生可能唔夠，有不足，或者佢哋 overuse 咗某啲嘅嘢咁樣。你要識得根據翻 you have to think about possible reasons for a particular patterns of findings emerging based on research, based on previous readings. 所以咧 in the discussion section, you have to go back to the reading. You summarize the findings first, and then you look at whether the findings match the previous studies. 係嘛？你要睇翻同之前嘅研究有冇相似嘅結果。有相似嘅，表示之前嘅人講嘅係啱嘅。如果唔啱嘅，唔一定係你錯嘅，亦都唔一定係用錯方法嘅。Because data sometimes comes naturalistically，佢一定喺度噶嘛。你用啱咗個 frame， 去 frame 嗰個 result 嘅時候，或者去 frame 個 data 嘅時候，佢自然就有嗰啲 findings. Then you have to discuss why the results that you have found from your research is different from the previous studies. That's the function of the discussion. And if you have found something new in your research, especially those that are different from previous research, that may be your contribution. 你真係可能有貢獻，你揾到啲新嘅嘢出嚟， you have to highlight that in the discussion. And you suggest future research direction. As I said, no research is perfect. When you use survey as your research method, your supervisor may ask, why don't you do interviews? 係咪啊？我哋好奄尖嘅。你做 survey 嘅時候就會問你點解唔做 interview？ 做 interview 嘅時候點唔做 survey 啊？做完兩個都做晒嘅時候，哦點解唔做埋 lead review 啊？做埋 lead review 啊，咁點解唔去 explore 下個 context 啊？ Because we don't have time. That's it. And because an article has only got 4,000 words, and in our case, sometimes 6,000 to 8,000 words. If you have too many things to talk about, you can't basically fill everything inside your article. So you have to, so there must be limitations. 一定有 limitations. There must be future directions. That's the key. So when you really find something important, how do you express it? So you share the insights and contributions, of course. So here we've got some sentences again on page 4. So on the right-hand side of insights into, remember, after you use insights as a noun, insight 係個 noun 嚟嘅, you use into something, into commonly identified linguistic challenges faced by students, dense cognition as a language teacher, insights into differences and similarities between the two groups, expectations of writing in English for international businesses, insights into foreign language pedagogical development, or first language pedagogical development, or how Chinese learners and English process new lexical items, or the last one, insights into how the bilingual lexicon works. Okay, so a quick question for you. I think it's a multiple choice question. The sample sentences with insights as a keyword. So what are the insights usually about? Are they about the writer's new perspectives on the subject matters? 係咪一啲新嘅觀點呢？ Or the writer's guesses of what the findings mean? 係咪佢哋嘅斷估呢？ The writer's personal feelings towards the subject matter in relation to the findings? 佢哋嘅個人嘅感受呢？ Or none of the above? So let's see how you guys are doing. What? Wrong answer? Well, you can't guess. Of course, so nobody chose this option. You are not presenting your personal feelings. Okay, based on the findings, I find it very interesting. You can't say that. You can't say, I feel very surprised by the findings. No, you can't say that. You're not expressing your personal feelings. Because knowledge always comes first in academic writing. So that is why you feel uncomfortable. 有陣時咧寫文咧寫 academic essay 有啲唔舒服嘅就係點解硬係好似唔係寫緊自己寫嘅嘢，或者唔係講緊自己想講嘅嘢，硬係要夾一重咧 exactly. Because we want to focus on knowledge first. Okay, so writers' new perspectives. If you have found something different from the previous research, or if you have found something interesting, you don't say that's interesting, that's new, that's different, that's innovative. and so on. Okay, and that new perspective has to be on the subject matter through the research. Okay, from your research, you have built something new on the subject matter. You have some new understandings on the research. And in terms of perspectives, that perspective may help you solve other problems。即係話咧，譬如話，如果我揾到好多同學好中意淨係用 according to 嘅，咁我就特登開呢個 workshop 嚟幫大家發現咗唔係淨係 according to 嘅喎，可以係 in someone study 嘅喎。咁即係話我嘅研究其實就係幫到之後嘅人點樣去幫其他人去做好啲，即係去改善。It's always about improvement when we talk about research. Unless you're doing some like very hardcore linguistic study like analyzing minority languages， 好似話如果我想研究少數族裔嘅語言嘅，maybe you are still pushing the field forward， 你可能係有一啲新嘅觀點去揾出嚟，but you also need to think about how it's going to help people in the future. For example, future researchers, future scholars, or future teachers who are teaching a similar subject. 譬如話，有陣時我想保存翻少數族裔嘅語言嘅時候，我哋需要有一個有系統嘅方法去將佢整合嘅。咁你做完呢個 research 之後，原來都可以有一個 practical 嘅contribution 咁樣。咁咧，譬如話in academic research, there are mainly three kinds of contributions that you can think of, whether you are doing your degree dissertation or your master's degree like Sylvia, or in my case, doing my PhD. First one, theoretical contribution, whether you are adding something new to the theory. 即係話你對一樣同一個樣嘅嘢，有冇一啲新嘅觀點、新嘅框架可以俾到大家去研究觀察咧？ Second, methodological contribution， 即係話你嘅研究方法有冇即係創新咧？係有陣時咧而家有 AI 啦，即係話我哋嘅研究方法都可以用多啲唔同嘅方法去解決嘅，唔使下下都 manually 或者係做 survey 做 interviews， 又多咗好多唔同嘅方法去做。Thirdly, practical contributions， 你嗰樣嘢做咗出嚟之後有冇用啊？meaningful 意思係對個社會有冇作用，對個學校、對學術界有冇作用，諸如此類。即係 again, I'm not going to ask you to save the world, but at least you are saving the people right in front of you, like helping my students, for example. There's a lot to think about, I know. Finally, what comes before insights? You can see the words on the left are highlighted in pink or magenta. I think girls are more sensitive to color names than we do. Further insights into, interesting insights into, important insights into, valuable insights into, deeper insights into, and so on. So a quick question. What words are commonly found immediately before insights? That's a very quick question. Nouns, adjectives, or adverbs? But now you know. But now you know which one is the correct answer. Yeah. Okay, Rebecca's coming up. Jerome and Shay coming third and fourth. So going back to the examples, the words that I've highlighted are adjectives, and adjectives are optional in this case. But if you do have something very important to show to your supervisors with regards to your insights， 即係如果你嘅睇法有啲乜嘢嘅嘢好重要，想即係話俾你個 supervisor 聽嘅話咧， I would ask you to add an adjective before insight. Fascinating insights, interesting insight, or important insight. So that insights originally having some positive values, add some more positive values. 呢啲字咧，你見到 further、interesting、important 全部都係 positive 嘅。你唔會話 bad insight 嘅，你唔會真係自己 sabotage 自己嘅，係咪？唔會話 negative insight 或者係 useless insights 嘅，一定係講一啲 valuable 嘅嘢、meaningful 嘅嘢。咁都係少少寫作上面嘅一啲嘅考慮啦，即係點樣可以 highlight 到你嘅 contribution 出嚟咧咁樣。And aside from insights, you may also want to talk about contribution. I think no more questions for now. So contribution, you can say there are contributions, but if you want to use it as a verb, 呢個字點讀啊 ？Contribute 係 contribute 係 contribution 轉咗做 verb 之後咧，佢個重音去咗第二個音節嗰度。我都係近來先發現。唔係咁，你唔係 presentation 㗎，冇乜所謂嘅，係咪 contribute to 都冇乜所謂嘅，係 contribute。The framework contributes to a deeper understanding。咁如果係用 verb 嘅話咧 ，contributes to something。咁個 to 後邊咧就係 noun 嚟嘅，就唔係咩 to understand，就唔係加個 verb 喺後邊。Contributes to discussions on preparations。咁後邊咧，你會發現就係都係。你會貢獻啲乜嘢咧？係咪understanding of current practices, practical contributions, or deeper understanding of the use of Vygotsky's ZPD constructs, theoretical contributions, or discussion on preparation or contributes to a growing body of work, maybe also research contributions. Then you have to go back to your proposals and look at the end of your proposals when you talk about the expected outcomes， 即係你 expected outcomes 係乜嘢啦，同埋有啲咩 contributions 啊。當你喺做完你嘅 study 之後，你就要睇翻係咪真係都符合翻你哋原本 proposal 嘅期望，真係 contribute 到咧？但係如果 contribute 唔到唔緊要嘅，都唔代表你一定個 grade 會爛嘅。你可以話係 implications，implications 點串咧？類似啟示啦即係好似係有啲新嘅觀點 implication，implication 係啦，啟示啟發嚟自類似近似嘅 verb imply 暗示表示。譬如話喺教學上面去表示啲乜嘢咧？有咩 implications 咧？喺 practical， 譬如話喺 business 上邊嘅 implications 係乜嘢咧？或者係management operations， 或者係嗰啲乜嘢supply chain operations 嘅 implications 係乜嘢咧 ？implication 後邊用 for something。係啦，好尾聲啦。Okay, that's about it. It's about to wrap up. Okay, so you need to flag your insights by highlighting the summarizing the findings supporting the previous studies, or you have new meaningful patterns emerging. So you can talk about the new perspectives on the topic, or if possible, if that's what you are trying to do ambitiously, you can advance the development of the field. Doing something that people have never done before, for example. Some final thoughts. So writing a research report is not just about describing what has happened in your study, but it's also about, sense and sensibilities. By sense, it means how we are presenting our research as a kind of report. But sensibilities means how you are highlighting yourselves as a rigorous researcher with rich knowledge in your topic, and then you have a voice. Remember, when you do a lot of lit reviews, it's easy for us to think about, they are doing things correctly, so I am going to not question them. 即係佢哋做開嘅嘢都 publish 咗，即係好勁啦，我唔 question 佢啦。You have to think again. You have to think again. You need to discuss in terms of judging whether the research other people have done before are still valid。因為有陣時咧，我哋揀 lit review 嘅文咧，我哋都唔揀10年以外嘅文嘅，因為特別係 research 啦。經常都 update， 經常都有新發現嘅時候咧，10年外咧好多嘢都已經 outdate 咗。特別係譬如話我哋做嘅研究啦，我今日做嘅研究寫完篇文之後1年先出嘅，其實好似 generative AI， 好似 ChatGPT 咁樣，我今日寫完一篇文關於 ChatGPT 嘅，出年已經唔啱使啦。所以我哋一定要 keep 住去睇，用翻自己嘅觀點 ，use your own judgment to determine the quality of the other people's research. And don't forget, you have to express your stance and attitudes towards the knowledge that you are expressing and the knowledge that you are gaining from different research. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this workshop so far. And this is the third workshop and the last workshop before you embark on your writing journey. So I thank you again. Before I let you go, don't go yet. I have something to ask you to do very quickly. So please bear with me for a second. So I'll stop the recording for now. So you can tell your classmates, you can